So we're here with our inaugural podcast up at Aerostar Games in Stephenville. We're here with Brad Egerton, Greg McCormick, Zane Lewis, and Tyler Patton. And a lot of stuff has gotten shaken up today, and we have a lot to talk about as far as Magic the Gathering goes. So let's go ahead and jump into it. This new set, which is Aether Revolt, is about to make a splash in a couple of weeks. So the pre-release is next weekend, and it's got a lot of speculations on cards that are going to hit Modern and Standard as well, and we'll see what happens. So we'll start off with everyone's favorite card and why they're excited about it and what they expect to do with it. So, Brad, we'll go ahead and start off with you.
Okay, I'm looking forward to brewing around inspiring statuary, just because what the card does is non-artifact spells you can cast have improvise, so you can use all these zero-drop artifacts to ramp into, like, you can use this to ramp into bigger creatures like Ulamog or something like that. I don't know if it'll be good, but, I mean, it'd be interesting to brew around. It'd be fun.
Okay, what does the card actually do?
Inspiring Statuary, it's 3 colorless mana. Non-artifact spells you cast have improvise. So you can use any artifacts to tap for mana. So theoretically it's possible to do Ulamog on turn 4, but Ulamog, you can do other cards too. I mean, you can cast planeswalkers for cheaper. It's spells, not just creatures. So you can do anything for tapping, your zero-drop artifacts.
Okay. So you're going to kind of start off with like an improvised kind of shell with this post-rotation and see where it takes you.
Yeah, I mean, one of our friends, Sean, he's already been brewing around like Tezzeret with it too. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Okay. All right, Greg, what about you?
My favorite card moving forward that I'm looking forward to is Disallow. I think it's the best counterspell Wizards has given us since Dissolve. I think it's better than Dissolve. And I think with the other things happening, it puts Control in a very, very dominant place in the meta moving forward.
Yep. All right, Zane, what do you got for us?
I am a big fan of mechanized production. For 2 blue, 2 colorless, I get to enchant an artifact. At the beginning of my upkeep, I get to create a token of target artifact. And when you get 8 or more, you win the game at the beginning of your upkeep. Well, my favorite mechanic is the Investigate mechanic, so I'm going to put this in a clue deck.
All right, Tyler, what do you got?
Yeah, I have Baral's Expertise. It's 3 colorless and double blue. And you return up to 3 target artifacts or creatures to their hand. And in addition to that, you also can cast a card that costs 4 or less from your hand without paying its cost. So you could, more in a mid-range to control shell, you could either offset the tempo and play another removal spell, flop in your favor. I think it'll just be a fun card.
All right, and mine is going to be Herald of Anguish. So this card has gotten a lot of mixed reviews in the DFW forums, and I'm seeing it as a Gurmag Angler with a lot of text. And, you could play a bunch of cheap artifacts. You could play this in like a blue-black Colossus shell that, a few of us have been working on. You could play this on turn 3 and turn 4. And you have this turn 3, turn 4, 5/5 that makes your opponent discard cards at the end step. So you're gaining value off of that. And for 2, you could sacrifice a useless artifact and nuke a creature. And I just think it's a really big force. And it could be pretty interesting in those blue-black shells if those actually take off. Okay, so the next one that I will say that I was wrong about, and playing against it, I will take the blame for this one. Tezzeret, the Schemer. I saw this and was very, very underwhelmed by him. I thought this was very weak for what the Tezzerets we've known and grown to love in the past. Thought this was a huge miss, but then the other night play testing with a group of people with the brews, this guy just beat my face in almost every single game. It is so hard to deal with if you ult him. So he's a 4-drop, comes in at 5 loyalty. He is a blue and a black card. For +1, you can create a colorless artifact token that you can tap, sacrifice it, and add 1 mana of any color. So he makes little lotus petals. -2 is you +X, -X, a creature, where X is the number of artifacts you control, and 7 is you get an emblem with, at the beginning of each combat on your turn, you get a 5/5 with haste. You do have to exile, or you don't have to exile it, but it doesn't become a 5/5 permanently. It's just for one turn. So what I like about him is, yes, it's only one creature, but in an artifact-based deck, you have so many useless artifacts just sitting around. Once you've played them, they've done their purpose. They don't do anything for you. So the ability to make them 5/5s is just great. Like, you make them have to have answers for nothing, essentially. Like, you're draining your opponent's cards for no reason.
Oh, and I also think it's worth noting that he's the first 4-drop planeswalker we've had that starts at 5 loyalty.
Agreed.
And then he immediately ticks up to 6, which gets him out of most aggro ranges. And even if you tick him up and get the Lotus Petal, you can then sack it for a card like Fatal Push, and that triggers Revolt, so you're getting the best part of Fatal Push as well.
Yeah, what do y'all think about the Tezzeret?
With me, my knowledge isn't that great over Magic, but it never states till the end of turn. So is it still? Would it still only be till the end of the turn that artifact becomes a 5/5, or is it a permanent 5/5?
No, it only stays till the end of turn, because every turn it goes away.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Sure?
I think it's the same thing as
Yeah,
Agent.
playing that way.
Yeah, it says target artifact.
Okay,
you
well, I'll
control.
apologize again. We were playing it way wrong the other night.
Yeah, that's why I was like.
So it gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to splash a black for him now.
Okay, yeah.
So my
It's
clues become
ultimate.
5/5.
Yeah,
gives you
no,
a free,
I have
Agent
experience
of
playing
Bolster.
against it, not with it, but yes, we were playing it way wrong then. So it's even better than, when he was beating me with the other way. But
Or did you guys just use Sharpie or something? Is that
yeah,
right? Oh,
he
that's
wrote the
why.
words in. So
Okay.
we have the dual decks planeswalkers too. We won't really go into those too much, but I think Tezzeret the Schemer could make waves. Like, it actually could be pretty good in these artifact-based decks that want to just go for Metalwork Colossus on top of that as well.
You mean the 6-drop?
The 4-drop.
Oh, okay.
The Schemer. So the dual decks planeswalkers are legal and standard, but we're not going to touch too much.
Why don't we
on
read
those.
actually what he does, just for the audience? People who
Schemer?
don't know.
We
Yeah,
did.
Did you read all the text?
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
So what do you think the impact on standard this set's going to have? Like, where do you think standard's going to go?
Well, with the banning of cards out of the top 3 decks in the format earlier today,
Yeah, we'll get into
I-
that next, actually.
the meta's wide open.
Control looks really good.
I agree.
Control
It's more
that has
control
black in it.
cards.
Control's got
Grixis and Esper.
the new removal spells it wanted. It's also got a revamped counterspell package it wanted. I think Control's going to be a lot more consistent.
And a few more win cons.
A few more win cons. Like, I think we'll see a lot of artifact decks.
I think the green-red energy deck might move into a more premier aggro spot, because the vehicle decks were in there, but with them losing Smuggler's Copters, green-red energy is really the only deck that didn't lose anything in the banning.
That's correct. All right. Well, speaking of bannings, so earlier today, the reason we decided to do our inaugural podcast today was the banning of so many cards today. I don't want to call it an emergency banning, but Wizards did jump the gun by a week. They were supposed to announce bannings during pre-release. So Emrakul, the Promise End, Smuggler's Copter, and Reflector Mage have all been banned in Standard all at once. I think this took a lot of people by surprise. It's duly noted that the last banning that Wizards had during Standard was in 2011 when they banned Stoneforge Mystic and Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Prior to that was 2005 when they just banned the entire Affinity
They
deck.
banned 8 cards out of the Mirrodin Affinity deck and just made a statement saying this archetype is dead. So, I mean, I read the reasonings, and the reasonings are Smuggler's Copter. It was just in too many decks. They said 62% had the Smuggler's Copter in it.
And that's of like including outlier decks too. Like if you look at the top few decks, pretty much the only deck that didn't run it was Marble.
Yeah, but I mean, so I agree with that. I mean, it's fine to be diverse, but when everybody that played Standard through the collected company Winter, which was this last rotation, everyone saw how much that deck was everywhere, and it was putting up results. It was half of top 8 here, half of top 8 there. It was just everywhere. If Wizards wanted a diverse format, where were they during that outcry?
Oh, maybe this is their response to that, and they didn't want another format to go, or another Standard rotation to be the same story.
I think they just give up on Standard basically in the bannings and making everything a little more fair.
And also like just this past month or two, Like, if you've been on the Twitterverse at all, everyone's been bitching ceaselessly about
Oh,
Standard.
I mean, that's standard. You're always going to have somebody
Well,
complaining, you know?
Yes, definitely, but even the pros are saying it's horrible. Like, I don't know.
Well, so
It's either Emrakul or Smuggler's Copter.
the Smuggler's
So maybe that's why they decided to do something. I don't know.
the Smuggler's Copter was in 62% of the decks, but it is nowhere near close to the Juggernaut numbers that Stoneforge and Jace run, and we actually have those numbers up right here. So when Jace and Stoneforge got banned, when Jace and Stoneforge were at its height, 88% of the decks had 4 copies of Jace in it. 70% had 4 copies of Stoneforge Mystic. Those are both astronomically higher than the 62%. And these were all one deck. These are all one, maybe 2 different types of decks. This is just, in general, different decks. You know, I can come up with 5 or 6 decks right now that had Smuggler's Copters in it and now all take a huge hit because of it. So it's trying to say it's a diverse format. They want a diverse format, but they hit all the diversity in the format.
Well, not necessarily, because if you look at it from a deck builder's point of view, if you take Smuggler's Copter out of the contention for the 2-drop slot, it opens up so many other cards that wouldn't have seen play because Smuggler's Copter was more efficient and just better. So it does hit all of the decks equally, but at the same point, it also allows other people to take decks and take lesser or a different route with different cards, as opposed to cramming a playset of Smuggler's Copters or looking back at old stuff. You can say the same thing about Wormcoil Engine and the Titans.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess like the next thing is, what do y'all think of the ban for Standard? At least we'll get into Modern in a minute. Do you think it's going to be good or bad for the format?
I think that if they wanted to ban Smuggler's Copters, that alone was the justification they needed to ban Emrakul and Reflector Mage, because if the meta was set up pretty well to be 33% for the Blue-White Flash, the Aetherwork Marvel, and the Vehicles deck. If you ban Smuggler's Copter out of that, the Vehicles deck drops significantly. The Blue-White Flash deck loses some, and then the Aetherwork Marvel just gobbles up the meta percentage that they were there.
I agree with that.
So in order to keep the diverse format that they were talking about, they had to hit all 3 of the decks so one doesn't overpower the
Just took
power vacuum.
Just took so many people off guard today because Wizards pretty much came in and cleaned house on Standard and said we're going to start from scratch and see what happens.
I think Reflector Mage surprised everybody, but
well, Reflector Mage, as he said, you can't have one exist with the others gone.
yeah, exactly.
You know?
Like with no Emrakul,
Yeah.
it's going to be.
So it's shocking, but I mean, I don't know where it's going to go from here. So
I personally don't think that that Emrakul bans as hard on Marvel as you think, because sometimes just a turn 4 Ulamog is strictly better, just hitting half their lands.
So the difference between Emrakul and Ulamog is if you have an Emrakul in your hand, you can still cast it for 7 or 8 mana. If you have Ulamog in your hand, it's a dead card until turn 10 in those decks. So that's where it's going to hurt the Marvel decks so bad. Like, yeah, they'll try it, but if you keep drawing Ulamogs before you can Marvel them, you're in trouble.
Maybe Marvel can adjust somehow. I don't know, with putting in some of the new, or some ramp to where it's not just a total dead card, or some sort of, I don't know, there's different brews you could do to maybe make it a little bit more resilient without Emrakul, but I don't know.
Oh, for sure.
Right now it's looking tier 2 at least.
If anyone's going to figure it out, we'll know in a few weeks when the Pro Tour hits. They'll figure it out if anyone will. Okay, so the modern side of it, we had Gentaxian Probe and Golgari Grave Troll both get banned. I'm going to go ahead and say this out here. I feel like as a Dredge player, we're getting picked on. They took away Golgari Grave Troll initially from us, gave it back, and then took it away again. It's like they're just taunting us, and then they're going to take away our candy again. So, I did not see Golgari Grave Troll coming. I personally expected Cathartic Reunion, as did much of the other Dredge population. This kind of puts Dredge in trouble. I'm not going to say it kills it, but it makes it very, very difficult to run and be viable. It's like cutting off one of the main legs.
Don't filter as quick, and it's not as fast as a deck.
It effectively slows you down 2 turns, essentially. Like, you could run the Thug and Dredge 4, but there is a big difference between Dredge 6 and Dredge 4.
There is.
But they pretty much said that they don't want it to be a sideboard war, which is why they banned Middle Misstep. So But the way I see it is different decks, you have to sideboard for them anyway. If they're good enough, you're going to have that sideboard war, and that's where it gets. Infect, it's hard to have a sideboard war for Infect because it's so fast. So they just kind of left it alone. I guess they banned Gentaxian Probe thinking it would make a big difference, but taking out Gentaxian Probe is very minimalistic to that strategy. But I don't know. Like I said, we'll see where Dredge goes from here. But
It does suck for Dredge players.
the Grave Troll banning does hit Dredge really hard. It's not just something to just kind of wave off.
Yeah. And also, just looking at all the bans in general, like whether or not it's good, I think on an individual basis depends on where your investments lie. Like, I have 4 Emrakuls and 5 Copters right now. That's like basically losing $150. So it's not that fun. But,
Yeah.
Overall, though, like not just looking at me, like I think Standard probably will be better. Will be more diverse.
That's a good point. As investments, Standard has typically been the format that is safe. If you buy these cards, you'll play with them the whole rotation. Does this send a message to Standard players that no format is safe? If a card gets too good, be careful about buying these cards because we're going to ban them. Like, where does it stop? Where does the book stop?
I'm wary, but at the same point, I think that you can look at the next year with. You have to take in consideration that with them changing the rotation cycle and then changing it back, this may also be a precursor to just banning stuff that they knew were going to be issues with the next set. Because if you remember, when Amonkhet comes out, originally Battle for Zendikar wasn't even supposed to be in that block. So there might be some interactions and things that they're looking at that could be too oppressive moving forward.
That's a good point.
That's very fair.
Okay, so with these bannings in Modern, what decks do you think will actually come to power? I guess obviously Dredge was at the top, but it is at this point I would consider Dredge not near the top right now until we see what happens.
Tier 2.
Yeah, tier 2.
Yeah.
I see decks like Jund and Abzan with the addition of Fatal Push moving up, getting a lot more consistent. I see Modern slowing down a lot compared to what it was. And I think it's going to be a lot more of just a grindy format.
Well, that's good that you brought that up because one of the decks that was holding Jund down was Dredge. Like, Dredge goes down, Jund will go up a little bit.
Yeah.
And if Jund goes up, I would think Abzan goes up. Both of those decks are kind of similar in the way they play.
Yeah, and both of those will see an uptick because with Infect dodging another big ban system or another banning because they keep Might of Old Corrosa, they keep Become Immense. The percentages of that deck would probably go up some, which increase both Jund and Abzan, especially with the addition of Fatal Push.
So let's also talk about another deck that, with the hate for graveyards going down, which I would assume it would with Dredge getting hit, does Goryo's Vengeance make a comeback?
I think that's something we'll know in a few months because at the beginning, there are people still probably going to try Dredge. They're not going to be completely just shut out on it. But sideboarding will go down a little bit for it. And I think that once the sideboards slow down, Goryo's Vengeance could, a few months down the road, get a little bit better.
Well, not being too familiar with the deck, without cards like Get Probe and things like that, what were the consistency of Goryo's Vengeance?
Well, Goryo's Vengeance is an instant speed reanimate target legendary creature. It is the instant speed, but a lot of times they'll filter the yard trying to dig for a Goryo's Vengeance. So if you just sit turns with your yard, or if they have a black leyline in play, Goryo's Vengeance does not work because immediately when the creature hits, it exiles. So you have to have the combo in your hand right then and there to make it work. So they can't just filter their hand and fix their hand at will. They actually have to have it that turn, and that was an issue. But also the Black Trap, the instant speed, exile the graveyard if 3 or more cards, I believe it's 3 or more cards go in. Ravenous Trap, thanks. But with that gone, I don't think that card sees play without Dredge at the top either.
No.
So they could go in response, Ravenous Trap, kill the combo. So Goryo's Vengeance could make a comeback. I don't know. Like, that was another deck that people called to have its head too, because turn 2 you could kill him. So it's just kind of, it just does a ring around the rosy effect. Okay.
So let's talk a little bit more about Infect. You were mentioning earlier about possible replacements for Gitaxian Probe.
There are multiple ways you could replace Gitaxian Probe.
And what was that one card you were mentioning?
I personally think Rancor might make a comeback in Infect as the next one drop. Makes Glistener Elf a 3/1 trampler on turn 2. You don't get to see the perfect information, but for one card, you're hitting them for 3 Infect trample, and if you remove the Glistener Elf, you get the Rancor back. So, I mean, I think that could be a powerful player in the next series of Infects.
That's interesting. Infect players are definitely going to be trying some things out for sure.
So, like I said, I think moving forward with this new Fatal Push and everything, there's going to be a lot more of the removal and hand disruption based decks try to make a push and come back and just fight the hyper aggro decks. Okay, so I guess the biggest other thing that surprised me is they banned all these cards. They didn't unban one card. And I've been in talks with several people for weeks. Greg, you've been one of them. Like, we've been talking about possible unbannings and what we would think. And I got to say, I'm a little surprised that nothing got unbanned, not one card.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my 3 top options is Chromox, Bloodbraid Elf, and Jace the Mind Sculptor. Not one of those got unbanned. All 3 of those cards are perfectly fair in this format. Like, why do you think Wizards is holding them back?
Maybe.
Well, I think at least with Mind Sculptor, they are still afraid because of how oppressive it was in Standard. I personally think it should be unbanned because it gives Control something. It gives them a chance to be viable. Because right now in Modern, Control is it's not bad, but it's not good. The fact that there are too many unfair things going on, they need something to make them more viable. Ancestral Visions was a good start, but it wasn't enough. Jeskai Control, or the Nahiri Control deck, was popular for a while, and then it's gone back down to Tier 2, Tier 1.5.
I mean, I think Bloodbraid Elf, with what's been happening to Jund and Jund's downslide, I thought Bloodbraid Elf getting unbanned was a necessary evil for the mid-range decks to be viable in this hyper-aggressive format, but I think the banning of Golgari Grave Troll kind of helped Jund out enough to where Bloodbraid's not a thing. Like, my thing is Bloodbraid getting unbanned would make Big Zoo viable again, or things like that, maybe like Boss Naya kind of stuff. Yeah. But I think if you unban Jace, you have to unban Bloodbraid.
Yeah.
Because they counteract each other, kind of like what just happened with the Standard ban. You ban one, you have to ban these other pieces, otherwise the deck will just take over. And Chrome Mox, I think they banned Chrome Mox just because it has the word Mox in it. I don't think there's any reason for that card to be banned. If we have things like Mox Opal in play right now, Simian Spirit Guide, like this card, you have to willingly 2-for-1 yourself to keep it, and it does pretty much what those other cards do as well. So... But I don't know. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I think like what breakout decks do you think will happen immediately with this for Modern?
For Modern, honestly, I've been on Fish for a little while, and I think even with Fatal Push, that deck does see an uptick because if the format goes more mid range and just grindier, those are the matchups where the Fish deck thrives. It's just too it's too consistent, and it punishes players too hard for the pain mana base that you have to take.
Brad, what are your opinions on it?
Well, I can say what I hope. I hope Infect isn't. I hope it's still really good because that's what I play. But we'll see. I think Infect will probably still be good if I had to guess. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
We covered it, but I'm pretty sure that actually more Abzon will pop up higher in the Control mid-range direction.
Well, I know for me what I hope is completely different than what I expect, and what I expect is probably on par with what Zane is thinking. I think Lantern Control is going to break out pretty quick. I mean, it's already been on the uprise. I think this is another option. It kills one of the fast decks. It lets them catch up. And Lantern has a good matchup against Infect. And Fatal Push is going to improve that as well. They get a 1-drop kill spell to slow them down a turn further, and it gets a card out of your hand. Like, I'm not looking forward to playing against Lantern because, again, it's just kind of one of those things where they get to play Magic and then watch you sit there for 50 minutes. But I think it's a very fine deck. So, I mean, I expect that to hit right out of the gate.
Well, It is nice though, at least with if Lantern gets an uptick. The sideboard cards that were reserved for Dredge to keep that in place, a lot of them shift over to straight artifact hate, which targets both affinity as well as Lantern control.
Yeah, Lantern gets a lot of new toys with Aether Revolt dropping too.
Yeah.
So, okay, after talking about this, do you think Wizard is starting to get carried away with the ban unbans? Because it seems like last ban I read an article that said they do not like banning cards. They would rather unban cards rather than ban cards. But this kind of seems completely counteractive with what that article said. You know, you hit 7 or 8 cards in a row, or 5 or 6 cards in a row in one ban. That's sending a pretty clear message.
Well, I honestly thought Modern was pretty okay where it was. Like, Dredge wasn't really... I mean, you look at the top 8 lists, I don't think it was just representing an unhealthy amount of the meta. As opposed to Standard, Modern especially was very diverse. I mean, there's a lot of viable decks.
I think that they may have just had a little bit of remorse lifting the ban hammer on the Grave Troll, which is why they just smashed it back into oblivion.
Yeah, they kind of just like gave us a piece of candy, said eat it while you can, we're not going to give you any more, we're going to take away the candy store after this.
I will say it's a little concerning with Modern, because this is now the 3rd year in a row that they've banned a tier deck out of existence. Because they started and banned Birthing Pod, which killed that entire archetype, to see decks rise to prominence and then immediately get smashed.
Well, and out of those 3 decks, Dredge was the one by far putting up the least results, least amount of numbers.
Definitely.
You know, so
I did like their argument with Reflector Mage. Like, if you read their reasoning on their page, is that everyone hated it and it was just an unfun mechanic.
but that's incredibly biased. Some people find
Yeah,
it
it
incredibly
definitely
fun,
is.
and I don't think you should ban cards based off of biased opinions like that.
No,
I mean,
I
it needs to
agree.
be off numbers.
But yeah, it was pretty overwhelming.
Because I mean, that
popular.
everyone
But
everyone
if
said
that's the
Emrakul
case-
was unfun, except for those who actually play it. So those who play it, we thought it was a great amount of fun, you know?
Yeah.
Just like Lantern. Lantern is incredibly unfun to play against, but to those who build it and play it, it's incredibly fun.
Yeah, it's
You
definitely
just
not
you can't
consistent.
ban stuff off of that alone, you know? You got to do it off numbers and data.
That's a good
I
point.
guess I was fortunate playing black in Standard. Whenever I would play Transgress the Mind, always so happened to be an Emrakul.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't feel like running into that a few turns from now.
And back to the numbers with the Smuggler's Copter, 62%. I looked up earlier, Thraben Inspector approaches those numbers in Standard. So does
Let's ban
does-
Thraben Inspector.
Let's not ban Thraben
does that
Inspector
ban a
until this
warrant?
blues
Does
deck
that ban a ban also? Or like, do we ban Thraben Inspector because it's in almost every deck that runs white? Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Smuggler's Copter was that oppressive, and I think they prematurely banned it because with Aether Revolt, they're giving us the tools to deal with it.
Yeah, I agree with there. I think that since they banned something out of Modern, they had to ban everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily agree with them banning anything out of or Standard. I mean,
Yeah, I think Standard is one of those formats where if people are going to invest in it, you're only getting to play for a shortened time. You shouldn't punish them financially or anything like that.
yeah.
But especially with the new set about to drop, I think if they wanted to do an emergency ban, they should have given us a chance with Aether Revolt to see what happens. Because
Yeah.
if it turns out if people want to play Smuggler's Copter and then have it just get destroyed immediately, that's more power to them. That's their mistake. Let them make that mistake. You know, and it'll shift if it's actually that bad. So, we'll see. But all right. So, what are your 3 favorite cards out of Aether Revolt? Just favorite cards, flavor, anything, go.
Oh, well. Put me on the spot there. Well, I'd go back to the card I mentioned earlier. I really like Inspiring Statuary. I do like Herald of Anguish. And then I also really like Tezzeret. Like, just those 3 cards together, those are going to be really fun to brew around, for sure.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Well, Disallow, which I talked about earlier. Metallic Mimic, which is, I think, Lord number 7 or 8 that fish now have access to for a 2-drop. And the just the whole expertise cycle. All 5 of them, being able to play free spells is always fun.
All right.
For me, I would say like mechanized production. Sron, I guess that's his name, the new legendary dwarf that every time you play an aura, enchantment, or equipment, you get to draw a card. And I like shock.
You like shock, huh?
I like Bolton.
You like the shock reprint, huh?
I'll keep it simple.
I like the shock reprint. Okay,
Our players take what they can get.
I can get behind it.
For me, I like just like he was saying, the expertise cycles. And then on top of that, I'm really liking the Tezzeret
Yeah.
and seeing how that does. But on another note, that for the third one that we haven't really talked about, in green-white aggro decks, I think Oath of Ajani is going to be pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll also make like Gideon's
Sure.
3-drops and stuff like that. And it'll be pretty powerful.
All right. Well, the cards I'm most excited about are 3 that none of us has talked about. I think Battle at the Bridge is insane.
That's another card I didn't mention. Yeah,
Battle at the
With
Bridge is
improvise.
going to be insane in Modern as well. Like that's going to be really good Lantern sideboard tech for Eidolon of the Great Revels. Pacification Array. I don't know if y'all know what that card is. It's a 1 mana for 2. You can tap a target creature and it's an artifact. That card is absolutely insane. Like, it is just a beating to play against. If you get multiples in play, you freeze your opponent down until you're ready to handle them how you want.
What? I see manipulators are good.
I hear things. And then Yahini's Expertise is another one it was the very first card spoiled.
Yeah, that one.
I played against it. I played with it in Control, and Yahini's Expertising, wiping an aggro's board, and then playing a free thing in the ice or a free Liliana is just absolutely backbreaking. It is really good. So, I mean, I'm excited to do the pre-release. This is the first set I've been excited in a while to do the pre-release with. So,
I mean, overall, I'm excited for Standard. Period. Like, I know a lot of people. Like, I understand the pros and cons of all the bans in Standard, but overall, I feel like there'll be more diversity. It's going to be, there's more of a point to brewing now. It's like, it's not just how much better can we make Marvel or Flash or vehicles. It's, what other decks can we make?
yeah.
And on that same note, honestly, I would rather see a company be involved in their game as opposed to some of these other CCGs that have come out and something has warped that game to the point where it's just killed it.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've played several of them. I've invested money into several of them only for the game to devolve into whoever plays first wins.
All right, I can do that. All right. Well, last topic for tonight, the bonus topic. Real or fake, the infinite combo in Standard.
We haven't even talked about that yet.
That's why I left it. That's why I left it for the very end.
Oh my god.
What is the combo between Saheeli and
Okay.
the new goat?
So yeah, let's go read both cards.
So
just for
the
people who
combo
don't know.
is, let me see if I can find this white
Bad
card.
Splinter Twin. That's what it is.
Effectively, that is exactly correct. It is bad Splinter Twin. So the combo is between Saheeli Rai and, let me find the goat. I'm sorry for being unprepared for having this. I didn't expect to talk about this. I decided to let y'all have
I pretty
it.
much know it, but
Thanks for bringing me in.
So you use Saheeli's -2 ability.
So the -2 ability is something that bounces something you make, or something that makes a token of something, and it
You
has
make a
haste.
copy of any creature or artifact, and it gives it haste.
Okay, now I see it, because you give it to the goat will have haste. You
When
put
the goat-
Saheeli comes
Yeah.
out.
All right, it's Felidar
Yeah.
Guardian. It's when Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield, you may exile target permanent you control and then bring it back into battlefield. So you use the minus ability, make a copy of Felidar Guardian. Felidar Guardian token comes in, you bounce the Healy, make a copy, and then you just make infinite tokens. It's bad Splinter Twin in the fact that you can't flash it in on their turn, and you have to do it all at sorcery speed.
So I tested a brew of this last night and against Marty vehicles, and I lost almost every time. Thalia was just backbreaking unless you happen to have a
There's
removal
also
spell.
Authority of the Consoles just
Authority of the
completely,
Consoles
you just make them
completely
gain infinite life.
destroys it.
And the removal
And the removal's pretty efficient.
It's
Yeah.
really easy to stop.
Like I love this combo. It looks awesome. Like
It's fragile like any other.
yes, which I think it needs to be.
Yes,
Definitely. It would definitely suck if this became so good
Splinter
that
Twin?
it was the only thing. Yeah.
People are heralding this as the second coming of Splinter Twin, and that is not what this is.
I got excited for about 30 minutes, and then I read the removal we had, and I said, oh, wait a minute, never mind. This is
But
probably not the best.
the fact that the combo pieces are reversed. You have to have the 4-drop in play, and then it combos with the 3-drop, as opposed where Splinter Twin, you can flash in the 3-drop creature, untap, and then enable it for the infinite creatures on the 4-drop.
Talking earlier, what did we agree the earliest you could do it all in one turn is? Turn 6?
Turn 6,
Turn
because
6.
you can You can play the 4-mana flash guy, flicker one of your own lands. It comes back into play, which gives you the 3 mana to cast Saheeli, and then you can combo off that turn.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and say, at least for me, like until somebody figures out to break it, I've seen multiple people try to do lists, and like y'all said, it just fails really hard to the removal. There's so many different ways. I'm going to go ahead and say it's not exactly the realest combo I've seen.
As of right now, yes. Another thing is that the 3 colors involved, you pretty much puts you in Jeskai, and most of the control, or most of the shells we've seen this in as far as brews have been Jeskai control, which I think is going to be a lot weaker overall than Grixis and Esper going forward because the black removal is so good. So that's another big thing that limits it is like you have to have blue and red for Saheeli, and then you also have to have white for Felidar Guardian. Yeah. So we'll see though. Like there's definitely going to be people brewing around it and trying to make it work, and then I guess we'll see the, for the people who actually do play it at the Pro Tour, we'll see the conversion rates and whether or not it's for real or not.
All right, Greg, hit or miss on the combo.
Oh, I think it'll be a miss.
I agree.
Zane? He's like,
it's your opinion.
I'll go with y'all.
I just realized what the damn combo was.
I'm going to say miss for now, but I will say that these 2 cards are going to be legal for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you never know.
The potential is there for it to be broken, but with what we currently know,
It caused Saheeli to spike rise from $5 to 23 mid overnight. By the way,
If the right shell comes out for it, then it could be really good. But as of right now, just from my limited testing experience so far, it hasn't been doing very well.
Goat is not a Deceiver X art, and the Goat is not a Pestromite.
And then that other combo with the 4-drop artifact and the Fumarole.
Yep, that is another combo.
That's another combo, yeah.
Yeah, you could make the artifact guy infinite big.
Evolving Wilds back for your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Crack the Evolving Wilds and Fatal Push your little...
That's something you could include in like Grixis control, right?
I had a buddy, I'm not going to name names, his name was Sean Hughes. He told me he was going to make combo one night, and I said, okay, cool, I'll play test against it with my Esper deck and see what happens. Well, his version of combo was he had Panharmonicon with the Drowner in Hope and the Displacer with the 2 infinite combos in. So he's like, I've got 3 infinite combos. Well, it didn't go very well. Like, it's super fragile. It turns out if you remove 1/2 to each of the combos, then he just doesn't win. Mm-hmm. And he's just kind of like, well, we're going to go back to blue-black Tezzerator. And then I didn't win a single game after that.
Yeah. That's the thing about combo. I think we kind of learned that same, factor at work with Marvel. It's like during the Pro Tour, everyone just kind of went all in with that combo. And then it started getting better when people kind of toned it back a little bit and made the deck more resilient as a whole. So in the future, if more card comes out to where there will be a shell where the deck is just good, period, and then that's just the combo is just one of the win cons.
Well, and that's a good point because before the banning, that's how the Splinter Twin deck operated. It was a tempo deck that could beat you down with Delver of Secrets, and then it also had the potential to go, oops, I win.
Well, it's also duly noted that when Splinter Twin was in Standard, a lot of people made it Grixis, which was splashing black for things like Inquisition of Kozilek and stuff, and ripping out pieces that interrupt the combo.
Yeah.
We don't have that with this deck. We just don't.
No.
And so that's another thing that makes it fragile. But I also think this combo is kind of like a light in the sky that people are trying to grab. Like, they want the next turn 4 combo. Wizards just ripped away the other consistent turn 4 combo with Emrakul, so people are trying to find that next turn 4 broken deck.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're kind of striving for right now.
At the very least, it's very fun to brew around.
Oh, it's an interesting idea for sure. But as far as consistency and Standard, at least right now with the tools we've got and the tools they have to go against, I just don't actually see it.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I'm looking forward to playing aggro and then playing aggro against people who are trying to make it work and just running them over.
I'm interested to see where the evolution of the vehicles deck goes. I mean, the blue-white flash is going to have to audible into some stuff. Even if it exists anymore, it might splash into Bant for all I know. The Esper aggro deck took a hit with Reflector Mage and Copter going. This band just hit every deck in Standard.
yeah.
They just cleaned house and said, we're
Aggro
starting
and-
from scratch.
Esper Aggro and Blue Eye Flash.
Will it
both
even
lost.
hit Red Black Madness? They don't have the filter Madness consistency.
Green red energy didn't
Yeah.
get hit.
I guess
Nope, not at all.
I guess green red energy is the marquee deck right now, considering it's the only one that didn't get affected. God help us all.
Now they're getting a 3/4 for one.
Yeah.
Granted, you can as soon as you can play it, it's turn 2.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about that card now that Zane brought that up. Like, that's another card that I'm completely underwhelmed by, and I know people will call me crazy on it because
card?
it's a 1-drop 3/4. It's a 1-drop 3/4 that when it comes into play,
you pay 2 energy or it
the
bounces back to your
The
hand.
elephant.
Yeah, and if it bounces back to your
Yeah.
hand, you get an energy.
I think that card is also kind of a miss for me. It has no sort of evasion. If you play it on turn 1, yes, you get an energy, bounce it. Turn 2, you play it, bounce it, get energy. Turn 2, play it again, drain all your energy, play it, it sticks, and then they just kill it. So you drain all your energy, kill your first 1 and 2 turn plays, and then they kill it with a 1 removal spell.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why
granted,
you
you,
would
granted you have to have it, but you know what? Grasp of Darkness also hits this
Yeah,
thing
we
too.
have like 8 or 12.
Like
turns
the
to
removal
do
is
removals.
way too consistent to make this thing a powerhouse. And played on turn 3, then it becomes kind of average. You know, I don't know. I could be wrong with it, but it's just kind of underwhelming to me. If it had trample or something of that nature, I'd be a lot more excited about it.
It's also worth noting if there's some sort of like wonky revolt shell to come out, that does trigger revolt if you don't have the energy to pay for it.
It's fair.
However, it is not a May ability on the energy. If you have it, you have to pay it.
Like, I just want to say I'm thoroughly excited to see Ornithopter come back.
Yes.
We can even play with the Masterpiece Ornithopter in Standard. Let's get like maximum value.
Worst pre-release crack ever.
You have your new and sold.
Yeah, I've got. There's a new 3-drop in Soul Artifact. I mean, let's get there.
I said this on Facebook. I think Wizards is wanting Affinity to be masterpiece.day.
I will say this: the Infinite combo. I will say it's a hit if you're able to get it in draft or sealed.
Yes.
Then it is a massive hit. Like, I mean, that's the only way I'll like play it right now. But okay, well, I mean, that's all I've got for this episode. Unless y'all have some comments or anything y'all want to add. No? All right, well, I guess we will jump into it next time. We'll try to do a weekly episode and see where things happen. So I guess our next episode will be results from pre-releases and people talking about what they liked or disliked about it and what they found to be powerful or underwhelming and things like that. And then before you know it, the new set will be here and we'll be talking about game day.
Right on.
Enjoy your Emeralds while you can.
Yeah, you have a little while longer to enjoy the unbanned cards, so get it in while you can, I guess. But, all right, well, that's it.
Peace.